Hello, Kevin and Brian. How are you guys doing tonight?
Doing well. How are you?
Good. I want to thank both of you guys for joining me tonight. So for those who are joining us, please let us know that you are here. Let Kevin and Brian know that you are joining us. Just send us a hello in the comments so that we know that you are here. So I am Lena Lassiter. I am an advanced grief recovery method specialist. I'm also a licensed minister, and I'm a senior leader in corporate America. I'm also the founder and president of Forever Healed. We are a nonprofit, and we aim to assist those with broken hearts to end their pain and reclaim their lives forever. And this is done in several different ways. So we offer grief recovery classes. They can be done one-on-one, in person, or virtually. And we also offer group grief recovery classes. We also educate corporate America on the hidden cost of grief in the workplace through lunch and learns and seminars. And we also have a program called Helping Children with Loss. More recently, we have been partnering with the Commonwealth Attorney's Office, just providing services and inspiring those who have lost loved ones as a result of homicide. So all month, as you guys are aware, we have been talking about the power of forgiveness. So tonight, we're going to be talking about how do you walk in forgiveness when you have been falsely accused of something, right? So some of you guys who are watching tonight, you may not have been falsely accused of a crime, but what if you were falsely accused by someone in your family or a friend or someone that you work with? How do we get through that? I think especially during this time with the holidays coming up, it's a perfect time for us to talk about this. So thank you both again for being here. Hi, Angela. How are you? Thank you so much for joining us tonight. I'm happy that you are here. So she's one of my family members with the homicide group that I was just talking about. So thank you for joining. It means so much for me to have you here, Angela. I can't wait to get you on one night for you to share your personal testimony. She has a powerful testimony. So again, all month long, we're talking about forgiveness. Again, shout us out. Let us know that you are here. If you have questions, you can ask questions throughout our presentation, or you can wait until the end. So again, tonight we're going to be talking about forgiving someone or others when we've been falsely accused of something. Hi, Dawn, all the way from California. Thank you for your ongoing support. So, Brian, we're going to have you share a little bit of your testimony tonight. And Kevin, we have you here just to kind of shed a little light in terms of why it's so important to have proper representation in cases such as this. So when Brian shares his testimony, we would love to have you chime in, as well. So again, one component of our grief recovery class is forgiveness, the power of forgiveness, right? It's critical during our healing journey. I also want to say a false accusation is a claim, allegation, or wrongdoing that is untrue or otherwise unsupported by facts. It occurs when someone gets accused of a crime that he or she did not commit. One thing, Brian, I think is important to say here that even when your innocence has been established, the person that wrongly accused you may have caused lasting damage to your reputation. So I want to see how you feel about that comment as you share your personal testimony. So we have people that are still coming in. Hi, Peggy. Nice to see you tonight. Hi, Arthur Pat. Nice to see you. Hi, Tanya. Thank you for joining us tonight. Good evening, Chastity. Thank you for joining us. Hey, Rochelle. Good seeing you. Okay, so Brian, I am going to turn it over to you to share your story. Again, you can share how much or little you feel comfortable with sharing tonight. And just walk us through your journey of pain and healing and forgiveness.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for having me on. It is an honor to speak with you guys tonight. So a couple years ago, I got into an altercation with a roommate. Um, my part in this altercation was a role of self-defense. I was protecting myself. So after the fight, kind of thought, we were done with the whole situation. Um, a couple of days later, I'm sitting at home and I'm watching an episode of SpongeBob when there's a knock at the door. And open the door, and there's about 4 or 5 Richmond police officers standing outside of the door. And they asked if, are you Brian Saunders? We have a warrant for your arrest. And I'm thinking, for what? I didn't do anything wrong. Um, and they said that it was related to the altercation. And they said that we'd be going down to the police station, maybe for a couple hours. I'd get everything straight there, and then I'd be able to come back home. So I said, okay, cool. Get in the car, thinking that we're going to the police station. Well, we ended up at the city jail. And I was told there that I'd have to wait for a bond hearing. And I'm thinking, bond hearing, what's going on? Can I just tell somebody my side of the story? Wait 3 days. That entire time I'm in jail with the general population, not really knowing what's going on, and still thinking, this is kind of odd. No one has ever asked me my part of the story. No one's asking me any questions about what happened. Get to the bond hearing, get released. Still nothing. Go through about maybe 2 or 3 court hearings. No one's ever asked my side of the story still. That entire time, I just remember being obsessed with my own case, kind of thinking of okay, what if they believe him, or what if this goes to trial and the jury believes his story over mine? What's going to happen, Finally, after, several court hearings, months of waiting, I was finally exonerated. All the charges were dismissed. But there was still a little bit of damage that was done to me personally, mentally, that I had to work through.
So, Kevin, from a legal perspective, when he was saying that no one, asked his side of the story, can you just share with us or explain a little bit that whole protocol, that process? Why is it that the one who has been accused, they don't have the opportunity up front to share their side of the story?
Yeah, thanks, Lena. Yeah, it's very strange that it happened in the way it did, because generally you should have an opportunity to at least defend yourself in some way, and the fact that he wasn't given that opportunity, in some way, basically violated his rights. And you do have an opportunity to at least speak and say, okay, this is what really happened. It's very strange in this situation because all the police had was an allegation that was made. And it could have been made by anybody for any reason. You basically go into the police station and say, okay, somebody assaulted me. All right, so then you go and you arrest that person. Well, that's not really how it should work. So unfortunately, Brian not having an opportunity to give his side of the story, he had to spend time in jail, which is really something that shouldn't happen, just to have your freedom violated in that manner. So yeah, that's not something that I would consider to be normal. And also just having an opportunity to ask and request attorney representation at the time that they take you into jail. It's like, okay, I at least need to have somebody here to represent me, so that potentially, I can get myself out of jail. I can talk a little bit more about representation as we go on.
Okay, thank you so much. So for those of you who are joining us, this is part 4 of our series on forgiveness. And tonight specifically, we have Brian Saunders here with us. We have Kevin Lassiter, who's an attorney. He's also the treasurer on our board. And we're here talking about walking in forgiveness when you have been falsely accused of a crime. So Brian is sharing his story of having an altercation with the roommate and self-defense. And it happened one day. So Brian, you were saying it occurred one day, but then the police didn't come to your house until, like you said, 4 or 5 days later.
Yeah, the altercation happened on a Tuesday, and the police showed up on a Friday night.
Wow. Okay. So, so when they came, did you have any idea like what they were looking for you for? Okay.
No, I kind of assumed that it was related to the altercation, but I wasn't sure until they told me what the charges were.
Okay. Okay. Before we get to your story on forgiveness, and again, share what you are comfortable sharing with, but we were talking earlier about how when you are falsely accused of something, how it can definitely damage your reputation. I could imagine the trauma that you went through, especially never being in trouble a day in your life. So let's talk about that, right? So just never being in any type of trouble at all, always doing the right things and abiding by the law. So even in school, right, never having calls home because you weren't, following rules at school. So can you talk a little bit about the trauma, how much detail you want to give, just being locked up, right? So thinking that you're going to go and have questions asked of you to being taken to the jail. So can you just share your experience with that?
Yeah, it was really strange experience because, like you mentioned, I wasn't expecting to be in jail for several days. So first night, I was probably more in shock than anything else. Just really surprised to be there. And then the rest of the time, I was really kind of thinking, like in that survival mode, like, okay, you know what? I've got to stick to myself, not get into any fights while I'm here. Just kind of stay safe until I can finally get out. And then once I got out, I had this strange fear that I never had before. Like every time I'd see police officers driving by the apartment, I'd kind of think like, okay, are they here for me? Are they? Did somebody else accuse me of something? What's going on? But I always had a strange fear of being arrested, and I would have dreams of being arrested for things I wasn't, things that I hadn't done. Um, I'd be nervous every time I saw a cop behind my car, thinking that they were going to pull me over and arrest me. Um, and then, I'd have dreams about being in jail as well. And I still remember the faces of most of the people that I came into contact with while I was there. So I'd go to sleep and I'd see their faces and I'd see them talking to me, and I'd relive a lot of the conversations that I had while I was in there. And that's something that, has slowed down, but has not completely disappeared since that experience.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. I couldn't imagine, just the trauma, and that. And again, thinking that you're going to go be questioned to, headed directly to jail without, again, hearing your side of the story, definitely had to be traumatic. So thank you for sharing that, with us. So you were exonerated. All charges were eventually dropped. How did you begin your healing process, or how did you get to a point where you were able to forgive?
Yeah. So first I had to, it didn't happen until after the charges were dropped. So once the case was finally resolved, then I started the healing process. And I came to the realization that I needed to forgive because every time I thought about the other person, or I saw someone that reminded me of that person, or saw something that made me think of them, I would just get angry and I had to look at myself and go, okay, I don't really want to feel like this anymore. I'm tired of being angry. I'm tired of holding on to this. What can I do? So, actually, having gone through the grief recovery course that Forever Healed offers, I actually did one of the exercises that we learned in the class. And I modified it a little bit to kind of work for my situation. But basically, at the end of the exercise, I wrote a letter. And in that letter said everything that I wanted to say to that person. And then I read it out loud. And while I read it, I pictured that person as clearly as I could, got all my grievances out, and then I buried the letter. And when I buried the letter, I kind of, said I was letting go. I said what I had to say. Now I'm going to let this go, and I'm not going to hold on to this anymore.
That's good. And thank you for even talking about the class. Now I could mention that you have taken a class. Of course, you know that it is definitely safe, and we don't talk about our clients. But yeah, so there is one component of the class where we talk about forgiveness, and it's important because you have to be able to not only release your pain, but you have to be able to release that that other individual. So I'm glad that you took that journey. You knew that it was important for you to, number one, heal first and then release it. I also like what you did as far as, burying it. So like this thing is dead, right?
Right.
It's over, it's done. So has this changed your perception of the justice system at all?
It has. First, I kind of see that things are different than what you see on TV. So on TV, you're accused of a crime. They take you into an interrogation room. They ask you what happened. They ask you where you were, that sort of thing. Well, none of that actually happened for me. I go in and I'm automatically scheduled for a bond hearing. And then I go to that bond hearing, and then you're scheduled for another hearing. And then you go to that hearing, and no one really asks your side of the story. They don't interrogate you. They don't ask where you were, your whereabouts, or at least that didn't happen for me. And I kind of thought about this, as I'm going through the process. What would have happened if I didn't have a good attorney? What would have happened to me if my family couldn't have afforded to get good representation? And I thought about all the faces that I saw while I was in jail, some of them even younger than me, and kind of thought, how many of these people are really innocent that shouldn't be here, but are stuck because they couldn't afford a good attorney. So yeah, this whole experience really did make me a little more empathetic towards people that are in the system right now. 3 days isn't a lot compared to what some of these people are looking at. Some of these people are in there for years, decades even. And it made me rethink even some of our methods of punishment and maybe the resources that we could offer instead of just locking people away for an extended amount of time.
Yeah, I think that's interesting. And this is where Kevin will probably, start his conversation on the justice system. But I want to say this before we jump in, Kevin. I remember, Brian, when I was in Ohio, and I was a part of the prison ministry there in Ohio. And it was different because it wasn't that you joined the prison ministry and you had to go and you went out to the prisons and you ministered. It was different. They actually had you they taught you about the history of the prisons, right? And how it's a private business now. And one thing that kind of stuck with me, and I never forgot this, they talked about how they start to determine how many prisons they're going to build by how many Black and brown children, are in a certain class, like in third grade. So they start projecting from the time Black and brown children are in the third grade as to how many, prisons that they're gonna build. And I just thought I'm like, wow, this is fascinating. Like they're not talking about building, colleges. They're not talking about, facilities to help rehab, some of these troubled, children. They're talking about building prisons, for these children based off of the data and statistics of children who are, in the third grade. And that just blew my mind.
Amazing.
Hi, Bev. Thank God. I love you. Thanks for joining us. So Kevin, during this ordeal, you kept talking about just the importance of having proper representation. And what was your quest during this ordeal, that you were going to find proper representation for him? Again, why is that important?
So I'm not a criminal attorney, but I clearly understand some of the downfalls of being in the system. So first, when this happens, you're supposed to be innocent until you're proven guilty, right? But it's really the opposite. You know, whenever you're in the system, you're accused of something, it's very difficult to prove your innocence, right? So you're really saying, okay, I haven't committed this crime, but everybody around me basically is saying, yeah, you're guilty, right? And you have to figure out a way in which for you to prove your innocence. So having known several people who have had run-ins with the law, I quickly understood in this situation, regardless of whatever the cost is, that if you don't have adequate representation, everything can go south very quickly, extremely quickly. You can find yourself in a situation where you are actually doing time. And then even when it's done, you know, you're looking at your record, and you want to make certain that that is expunged as well. So on the front end, it's extremely important to make certain that you have an attorney who clearly understands the system and clearly understands how to navigate. So when we're in this situation, you know, there's all types of attorneys out there. My thought was, I need to make certain that we have someone who's representing Brian, who not only understands the system, but also someone who was a prosecutor at one time. So when I was searching, and I know a few attorneys here in town, but I was actually looking for somebody who specifically could address that issue and would be a good advocate on his behalf. So in getting the right attorney, it basically meant having someone who would not only hear the case and understand how to address the situation, but understand the system and understand who's on the other side as well, right? So my first thought was, yeah, I need somebody who has that experience, but if they also have prosecutorial experience as well, all the better. And again, it really wasn't a matter of cost at that point, because your freedom, you know, you really can't put a price on your freedom. So I know a lot of young men and women who are out there right now who do not have adequate representation, who may be in jail because they haven't done something or they're unable to prove their innocence. You know, it's unfortunate that we deal with that situation, but it is a fact. You know, I was in a courtroom not too long ago and watching the public defenders come in to defend a number of young men who were on trial, and the public defenders did not even know the case. They didn't know the people they were representing. The judges actually knew the people better than the public defenders. And even in this situation specifically, the public defender was stepping in for another public defender. So they may have looked at that case maybe 5 minutes before they walked into the courtroom. You want to get a situation where they continue to have continuances of the cases, but that person is still in jail, and likely because they couldn't afford the bail to get them out. So it's my thought, you know, anytime that we're in a situation where there's representation needed in a criminal aspect, I can't stress enough how important it is to have somebody who can not only adequately represent you, but who can aggressively represent you, who knows the system, who understands how to maneuver. Because, you know, it works in a lot of different ways with a lot of different people. When you get into a courtroom, or when you're getting into being represented, it can go a lot of different ways. But if you have somebody who is really going to be strong on your side, there's a chance that everything's going to work out okay. So that was the most important thing for Brian, is to make certain that we had somebody who was on his side and making certain that we got him out of the situation.
Yeah. And as a mother, I have to say, it was very traumatic, for me as well. And I know that some parents are dealing with this for a longer period of time, but just wondering if your child is safe, not being able to speak with him, to understand what had happened, so many things were kind of going through my mind. And again, that was just my little trauma, is nothing compared to, what Brian went through being in there. So it was definitely important for us. And I'm grateful that, we did have the resources to get him proper representation, because everybody's not afforded, that opportunity. That breaks my heart, as well. So we got some questions coming in. So Tanya said, Kevin, even though you are not a criminal lawyer, do you still have to take a course on it?
No, it's really more of a choice in terms of what you want to practice. So, of course, when you're in law school, you can make a decision as far as whether you want to go into criminal law or not. But even after that point, once you get out, then you have to make that decision in terms of if that's what you want to practice. And then you basically go under the tutelage of a criminal attorney. And then that's basically how you start your practice. So, yeah, it's not specifically taking a specific course. It's offered within law school, but it's really what you do outside of graduating from school.
Yeah. All right. So thank you all of you who have joined. We've been talking about forgiveness. So all month we've been talking about forgiveness. Tonight, more specifically, we've been talking about, what do you do when you have been accused of something that you did not do? How do we walk in forgiveness in that scenario? So Brian has been brave enough to share his story of when he was actually jailed for an offense that, he was innocent of. He was exonerated. All charges were eventually dropped. However, his journey was that he just felt like the system failed him because no one asked him his side of the story. So again, Brian, thank you so much for sharing your story with us tonight, sharing how you were able to, walk in forgiveness, sharing your perspective on the justice system. Is there anything else that you would like to share with those who are watching tonight regarding, your story? Was there an aha moment, a lesson learned through all of this? Anything that you want to share to inspire someone else who may be going through this?
Yeah. My biggest aha moment through this, and, this is really what I want to share, I mentioned this before. My entire perception of the justice system has changed after going through the situation. But the biggest thing that I learned was not to judge until I really understood the facts of a story. You hear about these cases on the news, you may read in the newspaper situations where people are arrested for certain crimes, and you never really know until you have the facts and evidence laid out, so it kind of made me rethink the way that I looked at people going through the justice system, and have a little more empathy for people in that situation, and even for people that, that truly did make a mistake. After getting a little taste of what they go through on a day-to-day basis, I do have more empathy for people in the system now.
Yeah. Yeah. And that was good to know too, because sometimes we'll take bits and pieces of a story and, and we want to share it or gossip about it, right? And we don't truly know. And I talk about it even, when I was teaching, in the children's ministry, right? You might see one kid hit another kid, and then you get on that kid, but you didn't see what the other one did to that child before you saw what you saw. So sometimes even the things that you think that you see with your own eyes may not, be the entire story, right? So always quick to extend mercy and grace until I have all the facts. And people know who work with me, I always, say this to them: facts. Let's speak facts, right? So, just come to me with the facts, not what you think, not what you heard. Come to me with the facts. So that was a very good comment, Brian. Thank you, Stan Perrin, for joining us tonight. Let's see, Chastity. So, Brian, I commend you for being able to forgive and not wanting revenge on the other person and the legal system. Thanks, Chastity. Was any charges brought against the other person for falsely accusing you?
No, no charges were ever brought on their part. And as unfortunate as it is, for a while I did want some sort of revenge or something to happen to that person, but at the end of the day, I realized I couldn't carry that baggage, so I had to let that go.
Very good. All right, so I just want to give some just quick pointers on, if you have questions, you can still ask your questions, but as we wrap up, as you guys know, I always do, I just want to give you some tips. So if you were in this situation, and again, we're around the holidays, so some of us may be upset with some family members over something that may have happened, or we may have been falsely accused of something. How do we get through it? So here are a few tips for us, right? So I want you to accept there's no way that you can erase what has happened. Even though the accusation may be unfair and untrue, the situation to you is real, the situation to them may be real. The second thing that you must do is you must heal. You create your own experience, right? So the first person you've got to repair your reputation, it starts with us. So you have to heal. So just like Brian said, he had to go through his healing process in order to forgive. You have to heal. Then we can't react to what we think people are saying about us, right? So if we allow ourselves to be intimidated or to feel guilty or shrink away because of what people think, then we live in this prison in our minds. So we can't react to what others are saying. And then the last point that I want to bring out tonight is just live. Just live, right? So don't react to any rumors. You give it legs when we react to it, right? Don't draw attention to yourself by trying to defend the rumor. And you need to give yourself permission to just live your life. So you don't have to try to defend yourself. The truth definitely will set us free. And I know during this time, my church, prayed with me and for me. So thank you, Divine World Changers International Ministries. You guys helped me get through this. So if you have a support system, make sure that you lean in on your support system, as well. And then Tanya said, I'm so proud of you, BJ. Love, God bless you. And Don says, stay strong, Brian. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
So Kevin Lassiter, do you have any final words for our audience tonight or those who will be watching our replay?
I know how traumatic this situation could be. It's amazing because just reliving it, and I know Brian may not know the whole story, what was going on at home as well, but just with the understanding that something is wrong, and how do we fix it? How do we get him out of this situation? That was traumatic in itself, right? And it's like, okay, we know when we finally figured out what was going on, we then had to figure out, okay, what steps do we need to take? Because truly we were his lifeline, right? It was like, yeah, we had to do what we had to do to make certain that he was taken care of. And that meant making certain that we contacted the right people to do this. So, and even going beyond that, it is once this is done, right? And it continues on, for a few years after everything is taken care of. It's still something that's hovering there, right? That you still have to deal with. And it's like, okay, so getting to a point where we're kind of getting back to some sort of normalcy takes a long period of time. So when I talk about, making certain that you have the adequate representation, that's kind of like the first step. But then you have the next steps after that. And that is, as a family, how do we all deal with it? And how do we all get better from it? And how do we continue to support Brian to make certain that he's okay? So it's a long longer healing process than, when something initially happens. It does take years to get to a point where, we've kind of gotten back to where we were, but understanding that fear is real, that anxiety is real, and it's going to linger for a long period of time.
Yeah. So, Brian, you've been getting a lot of admiration and people thanking you for your courage to heal and share your story. So, we're going to continue the conversation, guys. So next week, we're going to be continuing our conversation on forgiveness. So we may be on a little earlier next week. I'm going to have Teresa on here with me, and we're going to be sharing our story of being pregnant at the same time. Ex-husband, let me say that real clear, because Kevin, this was not Kevin.
Don't falsely accuse Kevin.
We were
No,
and share our story of forgiveness and how we came together and how we were able to build, a friendship. But tonight, again, we're talking about how we walk in forgiveness when we have been falsely accused of something. So again, Brian, thank you. Let's see, we have some more questions coming in. They don't want to let you guys go. They're hot tonight. I'm excited. All right. So Rochelle said, thanks for sharing your story. She has tried to forget people that got her caught up in their mess. Meanwhile, she said she's doing probation, and one of the others got a slap on the wrist, who she considered to be a friend. So she has a nasty attitude, of course, when this person calls, and she's having a hard time forgiving. She said that her freedom was stolen and he's living his best life. So to her, that's so unfair, with the justice system. Yeah. That's hard, Rochelle. Brian, were you gonna say something?
No, just that I understand that feeling, understand that feeling of that person to suffer as well, while knowing that, they're free and, living their life.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I get it.
Yeah. And Rochelle, I want you to remain free too, mentally free. So I know it's hard, when it seems like they got a slap and then you're stuck with this, situation. But again, choose to live, sis. Choose to live. And release him when you're ready. And there's no time limit to it. Release him when you are ready, to forgive. Okay, so Tanya asked, when a person is exonerated, how long does it take to clear their record?
Yeah, so it's going to depend by the jurisdiction, but you basically can request an expungement, after the incident and the case is brought. It can take some time. It may be a few years afterwards, because you actually have to file the petition for it. And then you actually have to have a hearing in front of a judge to actually get the expungement finalized. So it may take some time, maybe a year or two.
Okay, thanks, Tanya. Good question. Thanks for joining us tonight, Doris. I appreciate it. So she said, thank you for sharing your experience. There are so many falsely accused young men going through experiences similar to the one you've had. Definitely a lesson learned. Yeah, definitely eye-opening, Doris. Indeed. So Peggy liked how you wrote the letter to help with your forgiveness. And thank you, Patricia. Well, thank you for sharing your courage. So Brian, see how many people helped in this short period of time. So as always, everyone, please like this video, share it with those that you feel would benefit from this video. If you haven't done so yet, please subscribe to our YouTube channel. And if you would like to sign up for a one-on-one course with us to help you on your forgiveness journey, please reach out to us, www.foreverheal.com. I want everybody to have a blessed and safe holiday, and we will be back on next week, next Monday. Again, it will be a different time because our guest speaker has to come on a little bit earlier. But we're going to talk about walking in forgiveness when your husband has had a child outside of your marriage. And more specifically, how do you interact with that child? It can be done. You can walk in forgiveness. So we'll see you next week. Thanks again, Brian. Thanks again, Kevin, for joining in with me tonight. Peace and rest to everybody. And we look forward to seeing you all next week. Good night, everyone.
Thanks.
Good night.
Right.
Thanks for having me on.
You're welcome.